Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatho Jayam Udhirayet Shunmutam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridayantasto hi abhadrani vidhunoti suhritsatam Nashtaprayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Today we are reading Canto 1, Chapter 17, verse 20. Apratarkyat anirdeshyad iti keshvapi nishchayah atranurupam rajrashe vimarsha swamanishaya apratarkyad anirdeshyad iti keshvapi nishchayah atranurupam rajrishe vimrisha swamanishaya apratarkyad anirdeshyad iti keshvapi nishchaya atranurupam rajrishe vimrisha swamanishaya apratarkyad anirdeshyad iti keshvapi nishchayad atranurupam rajrishe vimrisha swamanishaya. Word to word. Apratarkyat, beyond the power of reasoning. Anirdeshyat, beyond the power of thinking. Iti, thus. Keshu, someone. Api, also. Nishchayaha, definitely concluded. Atra, herein. Anurupam, which of them is right? Rajarshe, O sage amongst the kings. Vimrisha, judge yourself. Swa, by your own. Manishaya, power of intelligence. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. There are also some thinkers who believe that no one can ascertain the cause of distress by argumentation, nor know it by imagination, nor express it by words. O sage amongst kings, judge for yourself by thinking over all this with your own intelligence. Purport. The Vaishnavites, the devotees of the Lord, do believe, as above explained, that nothing can take place without the sanction of the Supreme Lord. He is the Supreme Director, for he confirms in the Bhagavad Gita 15:15 that he, as all-pervading Paramatma, stays in everyone's heart and keeps vigilance over all actions and witnesses all activities. The argument of the atheist that one cannot be punished for one's misdeeds unless proved before a qualified justice is refuted herein, for we accept the perpetual witness and constant companion of the living being. A living being may forget all that he might have done in his past or present life, but one must know that in the same tree of the material body, the individual soul and the supreme soul, as Paramatma, are sitting like two birds. One of them, the living being, is enjoying the fruits of the tree, whereas the supreme being is there to witness the activities. Therefore, the Paramatma feature, the Supreme Soul, is actually the witness of all activities of the living being, and only by his direction can the living being remember or forget what he might have done in the past. He is, therefore, both the all pervading impersonal Brahman and the localized Paramatma in everyone's heart. He is the knower of all past, present, and future, and nothing can be concealed from him. The devotees know this truth, and therefore they discharge their duties sincerely, without being overly anxious for rewards. Besides that, one cannot estimate the Lord's reactions, either by speculation or by scholarship. Why does he put some into difficulty and not others? He is the supreme knower of the Vedic knowledge, and thus he is the factual Vedantist. It is the same, at the same time, he is the compiler of the Vedanta. No one is independent of him, and everyone is engaged in his service in different ways. In the conditioned state, such services are rendered by the living being under the force of the material nature, whereas in the liberated state, the living being is helped by the spiritual nature in the voluntary loving service of the Lord. There is no incongruity or inability in his actions. All are on the path of absolute truth. Bhishma Dev correctly estimated the inconceivable actions of the Lord. The conclusion is, therefore, that the sufferings of the representative of religion and the representative of the earth, as present before Parikshit Maharaj, were planned to prove that Maharaj Parikshit was the ideal executive head because he knew well how to give protection to the cows, the earth, and the Brahmanas, religious principles, the two pillars of spiritual advancement. Everyone is under the full control of the Lord. He is quite correct in his action when he desires something to be done by someone, irrespective of the consideration of the particular case. Maharaj Parikshit was thus put to test for his greatness. Now let us see how he solves it by his sagacious mind. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाखया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने. नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा. हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you for joining today's class. The past couple of classes, we've been discussing about what is the cause of suffering if somebody were to experience that cause. And Suvarna Bindu Prabhu was um, talking about how Krishna is the cause of all causes, and we continued that discussion yesterday in Kautukarna Prabhu's class, and we are also continuing that in today's purport as well. Here, Prabhupada raises a very important question raises a very important point, that one cannot estimate the Lord's reactions either by speculation or by scholarship. And there's a very, you could say, common question: why does he put some into difficulty and not others? Or in other words, why do bad things happen to good people? These are questions that that come to the mind of not just devotees, but for everybody. They may see somebody who are morally good, yet they undergo suffering, whereas others seemingly may not be encountering any suffering, but they are also very bad in their behavior. So toward this, there's a very important nuance to the pastime where Vyasadeva is instructing Dhritarashtra. So this happens before the war, and Vyasadeva himself, who's the compiler of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he himself gives good counsel to Dhritarashtra and tells him to give up the company of Duryodhana and stop the war. And this was after Krishna himself had come as a peace messenger. So at this point, Dhritarashtra, being the ruler, he had the veto power to stop the war and also discipline his son Duryodhana, but he chose not to do so. And Vyasadeva asks him, I'm giving you good counsel. If you do not stop your son, it will bring about the ruin of your dynasty. So you should, keep him under control and stop the war. And at that time, Dhritarashtra says something interesting. He says, he says something that we all talk about. He says, the will of destiny cannot be changed, right? So how will me acting now change anything there. That was his argument. His argument was, if the will of destiny were to happen in any case, whether I make an action or not, that's going to happen anyway. So that was his way of thinking. So let me read that part. So he says, yeah, Vyasadeva said it's, then Vyasadeva says, it's very difficult to know the will of destiny. What is for us to know is what is our duty. Contemplate on the situation and understand what your duty is. Is the war really your destiny? No, it is not your destiny. You must do your duty. That is what Vyasadeva tells Dhritarashtra. So here the emphasis is that Vyasadeva gives is, you do not know the will of the Lord. It is unknowable. You are thinking that this war is the will of the Lord, and you acting or not acting does not cause anything to happen or not. So now, like, let's remember what Vyasadeva said. He said, you should know what is your duty, contemplate on the situation, and is the war really your destiny? No, it is not your destiny. You must do your duty. This is what Vyasadeva is saying. Now, yesterday we were discussing about Lord Ram, and we need this segue because it's relevant to the point I'm trying to make. So in Lord Ram's case, his father wanted him to become the king, so he would be enthroned the next day. And then we know that Mother Kaikeyi wanted Bharat to be on the throne, and so she uses the two boons that the king had promised, Dashrath Maharaj had promised, and she wanted Bharat to be enthroned and Ram to be sent on exile. We know that part. And at that time, the next morning, it is Ram in the presence of Dashrath Maharaj and Kaikeyi that he's been told that he has to go on exile. And Dhritarashtra, sorry, I'm so sorry. Dashrath Maharaj is pained to tell Ram to go away. And at that time, he goes to his room to pack free bark and whatever he needs to go on exile. And at that time, Lakshman asks him, this is not the will of the Lord. You need to fight your way back. You are the deserved king, and all the subjects want you to be the king. This is injustice. That's what Lakshman comes and tells Lord Ram. And that time, and he also tells our father, he has lost his mind. He does not know what he's doing. He's been infatuated by his youngest wife. So you must remedy the situation by fighting the case, fighting your case, putting your case, fighting it, and coming back on the throne. That is the best for all the subjects of the empire. And at that time, Lord Ram corrects Lakshman. Lakshman was trying to be a little too bold and headstrong. And at that time, Lord Ram asks him to pause, and he tells him, see, Lakshman, I was there with Mother Kaikeyi and Dashrath Maharaj and our father. And it was not that our father was enamored by the affection for his wife. He wanted to keep his promise, and that is why he is asking me to go on exile. I was going to go take up the throne as a duty to my father, and I'm also willing to go to the forest as a duty to my father. So and he also says Mother Kaikeyi always has a love equivalent to the flow of the Ganga for me. And if my mother, he sees Mother Kaikeyi, although not his biological mother, he sees her as a mother figure. He says, if my mother wants me to go, I will. And Bharat, he's our brother, and I see him as a very proficient king. He can be a very prolific ruler. So it is best that I follow what is the duty. My duty is to follow my father's will. And so he lets go. And then and we know that part. So he goes on exile. And similarly, in the second half, in the other half of the Ramayana, we know that Mother Sita is kidnapped, and at that time, Lord Ram realizes that his duty at that point is to protect Mother Sita. That is his duty that he has promised Janak Maharaj, and whenever he married Mother Sita, that's his duty. So we see two conflicting behaviors from Lord Ram. In one sense, he is willing to say, okay, this is the will of the Lord. I'm not going to object or fight it. And in another situation, when Mother Sita was kidnapped, he brought everybody together to go across to Lanka, fight, and get her back. So in one situation, he seems to be passive. In another situation, he seems to have taken it upon himself to make a change, right? So this was the question that I was asking Kaudukarna Prabhu yesterday, and I was also thinking about it, and I wanted to, and because it's also pertinent to these verses that we're discussing. And that brings us to the same thing that Vyasadeva told Dhritarashtra, that we must know what is our duty and we must execute that duty. And when we say duty, the actual term is dharma. When we know what our dharma is, and we swadharma that we saw in few verses ago, swadharma is our ultimate parodharma. When we know what that duty is and when we execute it according to that duty, that is the will of the Lord. And another way, and there's a further story to this. The further story to this is after the war, Dhritarashtra goes back to Vyasadeva and he laments that, oh, I have lost all my 100 sons. And just a short story that's relevant to this is Prabhupada talks about the Lord being the knower of the past, present, and future, and nothing can be concealed from him. So Dhritarashtra actually had the boon that he could see his last 5 lifetimes, and he knew all the karma and all the activities that he had performed in those 5 lifetimes. So he tells, and when he meets Krishna, he tells Krishna that I know my karma from my past 5 lives, and I have not accrued enough, negative karma to receive such a fate where all my 100 sons are dead. So why is it that I'm suffering this? So at that time, Krishna tells, you only have vision of your previous few lives, but I know your previous innumerable lifetimes. And then he says, maybe 25, or I forget the number. The number is not important here. So Krishna says, 25 lifetimes ago, you poked the eyes of 100 ants, and as a result, they fell and passed away. That is why in this lifetime, you were born blind. You poked the eyes of the ants. So as a like a, I don't know, maybe sadistic pleasure, he poked the eyes of the ants and they all died. And as a result, he was born blind. Then he asks, why did I have to wait so many lifetimes? You could have made me, born blind and killed immediately, right? Why did I have to wait 25 or 50 lifetimes to get there? So then Krishna says, you had to accrue a lot of punya to have 100 sons. And in one lifetime, that is similar to an ant colony, you had to accrue so much pious karma for you to have 100 sons. That is why it took so many lifetimes. And then you receive this fate. So that is what Prabhupada means when he says Krishna knows the past, present, and future. He knows every lifetime that we have done, we have been through, and he's also present here within the heart as the Paramatma, guiding our actions. So coming back to the past time, so that time, now what we spoke about previously was Dhritarashtra, Vyasadeva telling Dhritarashtra that it is not the Lord's will that the war should happen. That's what he tells. And he tells you need to do your duty. But after the war, he tells Dhritarashtra that the war was the Lord's plan all along. It was destiny that the war had to happen. Now it seems like Vyasadeva is going back on his own words. First he said, the war is not your destiny. But now after the war is over, he says the war was destiny. So how do we understand this?
Because they won.
What?
That's Krishna won.
Oh yes, that's the thing. So the main point that Vyasadeva is trying to, he actually in the Mahabharata, he gives he says the Pandavas are the sons of the Devatas and then their side of Krishna, and that's why they won. But the main point that he's trying to make here is we can accept something as Krishna's will only looking backwards. We know that something that already ordained and happened in the past, that is, we can see that as Krishna's will. What we can do in the future as our duty is still within the jurisdiction of our free will. That is the main point that Vyasadeva is trying to make there. He's saying before the war, you cannot see the future as Krishna's will because you never know what Krishna's will is. You can only see the past as Krishna's will. And after the war, he's doing the same thing. He's seeing the future of Dhritarashtra when he's chastised by Vidura and he takes to Krishna consciousness later, or when he takes to the spiritual practice later. That is his will. but what he sees in the past was actually Krishna's will. So this is the same logic that we must apply to our lives as well. So let me read what that the notes I made for that. Mm, yeah, yeah. Yeah, what happened before is destiny and the future is our free will is the main point that Vyasadeva is trying to make there. And that is actually the right way for us to see and try to understand what Krishna's will really is. Because we will, there is no way, as Prabhupada is saying here, for us to know in the future what is his will. But wherever he has brought us to is actually from his will. So there's a saying that when we experience some suffering, it is either some previous karma that's coming to us, or Krishna really wants this to happen for us, and there is no way for us to know which of these is true. But one thing is certain: whatever karma may get one to, Krishna will always get them through that situation. And we will discuss a little bit more about this topic. Now, there are three ways in which suffering is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, or is experienced by the Mahajanas, or the different devotees in the Srimad Bhagavatam. First is experienced as daiva, or destiny, and this is and Srimad Bhagavatam gives the example of Bali Maharaj. When Bali Maharaj, it's funny because yesterday we were talking about how Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra are the ones who tell us what to do and what Krishna's will be and what your duty is in that situation. And we see the case of Bali Maharaj and Dhruva Maharaj, that their guru, who they considered as guru, actually did not give them the perfect advice at that point in time. When Dhruva Maharaj met Narada Muni, and he wanted Narayana, but at that time he depended on the guru at that point in time. But Narada Muni told him to go back, but he did not heed to that advice. So it's still a little hard for one to know when the advice of the guru should be taken or not. When we see the case of Bali Maharaj, Shukracharya knew that this is Vaman Dev, this is the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and he gave opposite advice. And even in that situation, Bali Maharaj had you could say, revelation by the Paramatma that this is Lord Vishnu, and I must surrender to him. And as a result, he did not listen to a spiritual master. So it's a lot more nuanced and complex than how we try to answer that question. That was one thing. Now, when Bali Maharaj was captured, at that point in time, all the Danavas, all the Asuras, they wanted to fight. They wanted to put up a fight and save Bali Maharaj. But at that time, he says, this is unfavorable. Our destiny right now is we must suffer our activities in this case. And interestingly, just before that, when all of the devatas, they had gone to Lord Vishnu to get protection from Bali Maharaj, the Supreme Lord Vishnu himself said, "This is not your time. This is not your time for winning the war. I myself will come as Vamanadev, and then after that it will be your time." So there's a certain notion of suffering experienced as a cause, as the cause of the suffering being destiny. That's daiva. Then the second cause of suffering is kala. Kala is time. We say kalos meham. Krishna himself says he is kala, or time. And that is quoted as being an irresistible force. Like Ram's exile was kala. It was an irresistible force where something completely unexpected, someone as loving as Mother Kaikeyi, getting transformed overnight. And this is not some slow poison of her mind, which has been done through many days or many months. It was just one conversation with Mantra, and that has somehow poisoned the mind of Kaikeyi, and Lord Ram having to go on exile. So this is considered as kala, or an irresistible force that causes suffering in one's life. It is a very disproportionate action. Like, for example, if I were to just knock the floor here, and then suddenly my hand just fractures or something like that, it's a disproportionate effect for something small as just knocking the floor like this. So that is an irresistible force and kala, and that can be understood as coming from the Supreme Lord. It's part of the Lord's will. And the third is what Bhishma Dev calls, as they were on his deathbed, and he sees Yudhishthira Maharaj and says, You did not deserve to go through all of this. And he says, this is the will of destiny, that this pain, you must not just go through it, you must grow through this pain. And that is what Bhishma Dev says. So these are the three ways in which the suffering has been described in the Srimad Bhagavatam through the eyes of the pure devotees of the Lord. So first we saw Bali Maharaj, and that was Daiva. Then we saw example of Lord Ram through Kala, and then we saw Bhishma Dev through unbearable suffering that the Pandavas had to go through. Now, this is a third person seeing the suffering and not themselves talking about it. When we see in Kunti Maharani's prayer, she has that beautiful verse where she says, Vishal Mahagne Purushada Darshanat Asat Sabhayam Vanavasa Krichati Mride Mride Aneka Maharathashrato Drauni Ashtatas Chashma Harebi Rakshataha. So in this verse, she talks about all the different situations where the Pandavas and herself, Mother Draupadi, all of them encountered some suffering, and she's able to see that as the Lord's will. So when she says she sees the poisoning of Bhim when he was a small child, Mahagne, that is the burning of the Lak Palace, Mahaagni. Purushada Darshanad is all the, you could say, man-eating people who are in the forest and protection from them. Aneka Maharathashrato. Asat Sabhayam, that is from Mother Draupadi, the attempted disrobing of Mother Draupadi. And Maharathashrato, in the war, protection from all the Maharathis, especially Bhishma Dev, Dronacharya, and all the other like Dushasan and all of the other Maharathas on the opposite side. And then after Drauni, that is the son of Dronacharya. All you gave us protection from all of these things. And that is actually the right way to look at suffering. It's not to say that Krishna is the cause of the suffering, but it is to see that Krishna wants us to grow through such a process. Now the question arises, where is God amid our suffering? So the expectation of everybody is, if I pray to the Lord will solve my suffering and I will no longer have any suffering. But that's actually the karma kanda expectation, that the Lord will come and give you something and then your difficulty will go away. Because the Krishna's purpose is not to solve all the sufferings of everybody. His purpose is to get one to be spiritually conscious. He wants one to go to spiritual consciousness, and he will take you to a place where there is no suffering at all. His purpose is not to get rid of your temporary suffering, but it's to take you to a place where there is no suffering at all. And he exemplifies this through the example of Vritrasura, being Chitraketu Maharaj in his previous life, and also Bharat Maharaj, who became Jad Bharat and got liberated. Because throughout this, the one string that ties these two pastimes is Krishna may not have protected their material body. In the sense, Bharat Maharaj became a deer and then he became Jad Bharat. He did not protect their material consciousness, but he preserved their spiritual consciousness throughout those two lifetimes. Only because Krishna protected their spirituality, the deer spent most of its time around hermitages, and as a result, it developed the spiritual potency that required to get a life of Jada Bharat. And as Jada Bharat, he did not talk to anybody. He did not care about his own reputation. Everybody thought he's a complete gone case. But in that sense, Krishna protected across multiple lifetimes the spiritual potency. Same for Chitraketu Maharaj. When Chitraketu was almost on his way back to Godhead, he just had a joking encounter with Lord Shiva and Mother Parvati, and Lord Shiva was actually, he liked the joke. He actually took it in the right spirit. But Mother Parvati was the one who took offense to that, and then she cursed him. And after that, Lord Shiva himself tells Mother Parvati, you may have cursed him, but the Lord Vishnu's devotees are very intelligent. Even this they see as the Lord's will, and they accept it for the service of the Lord. And then when he came as Vritrasura, it's interesting. We saw in Tuesday's class about how the Devatas, like Lord Indra, are considered superior. But in this case, Vritrasura was the one giving Indra. Actually, Vritrasura was telling Indra that you don't know how to fight, come and hit me. I'm showing myself to you, come and hit me. And he says, this is the Lord's will. You need to execute the Lord's will. That Vritrasura is telling Indra. So all of these situations show that the Lord's purpose is not to, just come, and if somebody's maybe suffering, maybe a stomach ache, to come and solve the stomach ache. No, that's not the Lord's plan. The Lord wants the devotees to anukulesa sankalpa pratikulesa varjanam, to by on their own accord take to his service and see his hand in everything. Now, the best way to see the Lord's hand in everything is to understand three parts of the Lord. One is the Lord is supreme, the Lord is all perfect, and the Lord loves us beyond anything that we can imagine. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what these three are. First is the Lord is supreme. So all of these few verses, we are seeing that it maybe karma is affecting my life. Maybe somebody else is. We saw Adi Devik, Adi Bhautik, and Adi Atmik kleshas. All of the um, difficulties we get from our own body, from others around us, and from the devatas. We see that those as the causes of suffering, right? But can Krishna say that, oh, karma and the zodiac signs and astrology is more superior to me, that even if they ordain something, I cannot change it? That's not true, right? Krishna is the supreme Lord. He can change it in one go. Actually, this whole process of Pancharatriki Vidhi, where we take initiation from a spiritual master, is supposed to break all of our bonds of karma. When we take to spiritual life, our sanchit karma that we have accrued over previous lifetimes, they are taken away. And then we take to devotional service, like we perform everything as a service to the Lord. I understand I don't do it there is some adulteration in the way I perform my devotional service, but I try to do it to the best of my ability. Like, it's not that every time I'm doing my work I think I'm doing this for Krishna. So obviously I'm still on the process, but for someone who's purified their consciousness, every work, even if they're working in some AI company, for example, they would see that work as being some service to Krishna. And in that situation, they don't accrue any kriyamana karma, which is karma accrued in that current lifetime. So there are three types of karma. One is sanchit karma, which they've accrued over multiple lifetimes. Let's say a mug full of that sanchit karma is taken and given to you to experience in this lifetime. That is a prarabdha karma. And then there's a third type of karma, kriyamana karma, is what you create in this lifetime. So if a devotee takes to devotional service, previous lifetimes karma are destroyed. And since they're performing devotional service, they're not creating new karma in this lifetime. So there's only prarabdha karma that's remaining. And no amount of meditation or no amount of yogic processes will ever get that through. The only way prarabdha karma is removed is by taking shelter of a spiritual master. And if they initiate you and give you diksha, that's the only time they take away your prarabdha karma. So then that devotee in that lifetime, he does not have any karma remaining. So the Supreme Lord can take away everything. So the Supreme Lord is supreme in the sense karma or any adi bhautik, adi atmik, or adi daivik klesha cannot affect a person. So we must know that the Supreme Lord has ordained something for us. So that's the first thing. Knowing that the Supreme Lord is supreme will make us understand that it is not our astrology chart or karma that affects anything that we do. The second is knowing that Krishna is all perfect. In the sense, he knows exactly what somebody needs at any point in time. And it's not that just because I shared my room with Anand Swarup Prabhu, Krishna will accidentally give me Anand Swarup Prabhu's karma and exchange our karma. There's nothing like that. Krishna is all perfect. There is no way he would, make some mistake like that. Oh, I accidentally gave his karma to him. Krishna would never make such a mistake. So that helps us appreciate how Krishna wants something to happen to us. And in that situation, if we know what our dharma and our duty is, then we will be in alignment with the Lord's will. And then we see two like slightly different cases where Vidura did not fight in the war and Arjuna fought in the war, in two slightly opposite cases where they both were in alignment with Krishna's will. We will discuss that in a little bit. And then the third thing, so first we saw Krishna supreme, then we saw Krishna is all perfect, and the third thing is Krishna loves us beyond anything we can imagine. Many people or devotees think that, maybe not devotees, but many people think that the law, I can accept the love of the Lord if he comes before me and bestows it upon me. Obviously, it's a conversation about the qualification of that person, that the Lord himself comes there. But it is okay. The way I want to explain it is, in the school we have this thing where there's a certain syllabus for students to take up, and then they get promoted to the next grade, like from 5th grade to 6th grade, for example. But in that 5th grade, if the person does not complete all of the classes and they fail, it does not mean that they can never be educated in their life again. It's just that they may have to repeat the 5th grade again, right? So the same way in our spiritual journey and in our lifetimes, if we are unable to take to Krishna consciousness fully in one lifetime, it does not mean that Krishna says, okay, this person is a waste, I'm not going to take him up. No, Krishna understands that this person needs a little more time, and he gives another suitable lifetime for that person to take up to spiritual consciousness. And he's Suridam Sarva Bhutanam. He's the well-wishing friend of everybody. So in that sense, he sees that even the non-believers or the atheists who take all of whatever he has provided as nature, takes the credit for themselves, and then still says there is no God. So it's like, let's say a person borrows some money from their father, uses it, takes credit for the money, and then tells that I don't have a father. It's a very gross example, but we know for sure that this is incorrect, right? The same thing is happening, but with the Supreme Lord in picture. He is there between lifetimes. Like from one lifetime, you'll have a certain mother and father, right? But he's been there across many lifetimes as Paramatma, in between one birth and another birth also as Paramatma, accompanying the soul in through the entire sojourn. So he's the one who's actually who loves us the most. Many people, especially in India, they consider their parents to be the God, like God, not just representatives or being some of the representatives that Lord wanted us to have in this lifetime. They pray to their parents as though they are God themselves. And we, more than parents, they also see film stars and actors and sports persons as God, so to speak, which is very funny. But they fail to see that the Supreme Lord has been with them lifetime after lifetime, and even in between lifetimes. So what can be said? Who else could love us more than him? So when we're able to see the Lord as being supreme, perfect, and loves us beyond anything we can imagine, that is when we'll truly be able to appreciate the role of a suffering, any type of suffering in our lifetime. So there were few more points that I wanted to make. That's the words Dadami Buddhi Yogamtam Yena Mam Upayantite. That is when we understand, which opens our heart to Krishna. So I wanted to close off by talking about some of the difficulties that Prabhupada faced and how he saw those sufferings. So when Prabhupada was just starting actually when he was in India, we know that many of the preaching activities that he started did not work. In fact, one time a cow or bull hit him and he fainted on the road, and then some person had to help him there. At that point in time, he was thinking, what really is Krishna's will? Does he want me to continue preaching or not? So this is, you could say, in one form of suffering. And then when he came and then he thought, okay, maybe my Guru Maharaj wanted me to Paschatya Desa Tarine. He wanted me to go to the West and preach there. Okay, and he found some way, put pennies together, got a free ticket, went to the US. And in the US, he was struggling for money. He wanted, and in fact, Prabhupada, just by writing letters, he got, I forget the name, but he got funds from some businessman in India who was willing to fund some of Swamiji's expenses and projects. But at that time, the Indian economy was not very liberalized. And at that time, funds were not allowed. Foreign exchange was not allowed at that point in time. And so Prabhupada was struggling there. So he requested some of his god brothers who were very influential with the prime minister at that point in time. And then they requested his god brothers to tell them to release some funds for spiritual activities which are happening in the West. And he wrote a lot of letters, but none of his god brothers were willing to budge on that regard. And then he wanted some help. So he asked some of his god brothers or disciples, anybody wanted to help. And there was actually one who wanted to come and help Prabhupada. And he wrote to Prabhupada, I will come there, then you tell my Guru Maharaj that I have come to help you. And then Prabhupada said, no, you tell your Guru Maharaj first that you are coming to serve Prabhupada's, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami's project and receive his blessings, and then you come. So when he went to his Guru Maharaj and spoke, his Guru Maharaj was like, oh, Bhaktivedanta Swami, he barely came to the temple. He was not a part of the Gaudiya mission, and he poisoned the devotee's mind. He said Bhaktivedanta Swami's project is not bona fide, so you don't go. If you want to go, then you are going against my will. That's what he told his disciple. And he also wrote to Prabhupada and said that my Guru Maharaj is saying your mission is not bona fide, so I do not want to associate with you. And at that time, it broke Prabhupada in the sense broke in the sense it was disheartening for Prabhupada to see that all of his efforts, trying to get funds, trying to get devotees for preaching, trying to get some assistance, none of them seemed to work. And at that time, Prabhupada says, I'm taking the shelter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he says, right now, the Supreme Lord wants me to focus all of my efforts in the Western preaching and not depend on any external facilities. And now that we think about it, looking back, that makes Prabhupada's mission even more exalted, and Prabhupada's sacrifices even higher. That he did not, even without any support from anybody, he was a perfect biomedium for Krishna's mission, and Krishna wanted to give him full, complete credit for all of this. And we're able to see that the suffering that Prabhupada went through, he was able to see Krishna was supreme, Krishna is all perfect, and Krishna loves me beyond everything. So I just wanted to touch upon these. I understand this class was a little bits and pieces, and I tried my best to tie them together. These were some topics that I've been thinking about quite a bit, and I just wanted to present it in the class because it's very pertinent to what we're discussing today's purport. I think we are out of time, but I thank you all for your association. I will strive to better prepare and give better classes in the future. Thank you very much for bearing with me. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Vishnu Vishnu